if hypothetically the indigenous people of the Americas did have immunity to old world infectious diseases like smallpox, etc., as much as the European colonizers had, would the situation in the Americas be such that most people in the Americas today would be native genetically, but mostly religiously Christian, as is the situation in sub-Saharan Africa and Papua New Guinea today? Interesting question. Interesting. This is a hypothetical question, but it's an interesting question. So, once again, we go back to the conquest of the Americas by the Spaniards. Brutal, barbaric invasion of the Americas. First, you have the Spanish conquest of the Triple Alliance. The Triple Alliance is in the Yucatan region, Mexico. Tenochtitlan was their capital city. It is now called Mexico City. This is around 1519, 1520, 1521. And the perpetrator of the atrocities and barbarities was Hernan Cortes. Hernan Cortes. He was this Spanish conquistador who conquered the Triple Alliance with the help of natives, of locals. So the Spaniards come by ships, small number of Spaniards, and they want to invade this kingdom. And this kingdom is actually an empire. It's an alliance of three states together, and they obviously have a bunch of vassals because an empire has vassals. Now, whenever you have vassals, vassals are unhappy, right? They want to be free. So when a foreigner comes, they say, "Oh, somebody has come from like God knows how many miles away, thousands of miles away. Let's take their help and overthrow our overlords, and then we'll be free. Then we'll get rid of the Spaniards." That's what they thought. So they allied with the Spaniards. The Spaniards marched onto Tenochtitlan, the city, with tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of allies who were natives. And at that same time, there was this massive smallpox epidemic that was raging because of the Spanish presence in Mexico. It was the combination of two forces. First, the smallpox epidemic, and secondly, the alliance of the Spanish with tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of natives that led to the decline and fall, to the defeat of the Triple Alliance. And then the Spaniards killed off their allies also, and they had no intention of going back. And they colonized and Christianized everything. They destroyed all the temples. They burned all the books. They killed the emperor. They did all kinds of horrific atrocities. Even today, the natives remember that. And yeah, they Christianized Mexico and the region. That's what happened. And then you have the conquest of the Inca Empire, which is Western South America. Okay, Peru, no, what Peru, Chile, that region, right? So that is maybe a decade or so after the destruction of the Triple Alliance. So the conquest of the Inca Empire was done by another barbarian called Francesco Pizarro. Okay, 1530s, early 1530s, we're talking about. And the Inca emperor was Atahualpa, and he was killed by the Spaniards. And similarly, once again, you had smallpox and other horrific epidemics the Spaniards brought in. So that is kind of how things happened. Now, with that explained in tremendous detail, let me address the question. If hypothetically these indigenous people had immunity to these diseases, then what would have happened? Then they would have defeated the Spaniards. And then Christianization would not have happened. Even in North America, whether it's the French or the English, wherever they appeared, natives started dying out because of the epidemics they brought in, the diseases they brought in. Even the Spaniards who explored Florida, etc., they also, wherever they passed, you come back 20 years later, there's no villages left. It was a thriving place, tens of thousands of people, suddenly nothing left. There's no villages, nothing. So wherever these people went, the Europeans, the diseases spread. And that's how so many of the natives, they died, and the resistance was futile. They could not resist the invaders. And that's how things went. And the invaders were not content with occupying the land and oppressing and subjugating the natives. They also destroyed their culture and imposed Christianity on the natives. So if this immunity existed, then most of the people in the Americas would not just be native genetically, but they would also not be Christian. That's how I see it. Now, comparing with Sub-Saharan Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa was decimated by two foreign religions. One was Islam, second was Christianity. So Africa, if you look at it today, there's very little indigenous religion left today. Most of it is either Islamic or Christian. But Africa is different from the Americas because Africa was much closer in proximity geographically to Europe and to the Islamic world. So it was very easy to invade. But when it comes to the Americas, they are across a gigantic ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, very hard to invade. So that's why I would say that if this immunity had existed, the people would be genetically native, and also they would still have their original culture and religion. They would not have been Christianized. That's how I think it would have gone. But it's obviously a hypothetical question because we know what's happened there.